for those people who may not know who Gary Chester was, can you sort of, I mean, I just went down the discography and I'm like, you're right. I mean, I had the pleasure of interviewing Hal Blaine and his discography, but Gary's discography is incredible. The Coasters, The Lovin' Spoonful, Van Morrison, Brown Eyed Girl. I mean, you know, Jim Croce. Oh man, all of those songs with Jim Croce. Tell us about your dad for those who may not know who Gary Chester is.
Gary Chester is a little guinea from the Bronx who wanted to be a drummer, and his dad wanted him to be a barber. They were immigrants. And so in order to play in the alleyway on boxes, my grandfather would tell him, learn how to cut hair, and then you can go back there. And so my dad would listen to these like transistor radios and play drums back there. And however crazy this sounds, it is totally true. At 13 years old, in the 8th grade, which I think is 13 years old, he ran away from home to be a drummer.
Wow. Where'd he go?
Well, that's part of this discovery, Dave.
Okay.
This has been pretty wild because, I mean, not asking those kinds of questions, you just would never have known. So the more investigating that we did, I was calling everybody and anybody that I knew. We pieced together that my father ended up with a piano player. Oh, what was his name? Oh, wow, it's really escaping. Oh, Clarence Prophet. Clarence Prophet is a piano player that was originally from Chicago that moved to Harlem. So we're talking like a man in his mid-20s at the time. This would never happen today, right?
Right.
And little Gary Chester comes. He's in the 8th grade.
13-year-old kid.
Yes, and he's sneaking into jazz clubs and he wins the. He's like, I think there's 3 winners or something like that for the World's Fair. Gene Krupa.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And Gary was one of the winners.
Wow.
At that age. Yeah. And then he runs into Clarence Prophet and he moves in with him.
Wow.
And so Gary Chester's living with Clarence Prophet, and Clarence Prophet, I mean, there's so many bands that Clarence Prophet has played with, but I'd rather everybody just Google Clarence Prophet. You can find him on YouTube. And he took my dad under his wing and he started playing jazz. And from there, he went on the road with a trio, the Milt Hearth Trio. Really good. And he's just this young guy, and he's really doing it. He's touring and he's traveling around. And I guess it was like the mid-50s. He started getting commercials. Just commercials, dog food or cat food, you know, beer and stuff like that. And around 59, 60, around then, he gets called in because Panama Francis can't make a date in New York. This is all part of the whole Brill Building era.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody doesn't know what the Brill Building is, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there was one building that was a one-stop shop. And it was literally proposed to me by like Jeff Barry and Mike Stoller, and all of these like engineers that were working at the time and producers at the time, that the first floor you'd walk in and there would be like an assessor. What do? Do you write music? Do you play? Do you sing? Okay, we like you. Go to the second floor. And it was writers. If you're an artist, then you're getting songs and you're writing with them. And then if that works out, then you go to the third floor. It's a manager. I mean, I'm being facetious because I don't really know what the order was, but you would just keep going up and up until you had a record deal. And the next thing you know, you're making records. And the Brill Building was this historical landmark of artists like Neil Sedaka and Carole King that are writing these songs. They'll write them in one room, go upstairs, rent out Mirror Sound. The best studio players in New York City at the time would be called for these sessions. And once my father went in to sub for Panama Francis, it went so great that it never stopped. And the next thing you knew, he was doing 3 to 4 to 5 sessions a day. Every day, from Brown Eyed Girl to Twist and Shout to, oh my word.
The Coaster.
Oh yeah, Sugar Sugar by the Archies. He was working with people like Artie Butler, an amazing, amazing artist in his own right, but also like he started as an engineer. These are people that without these people, we would never have gotten the artists like the Coasters and Jay and the Americans and the Drifters. Oh man, so many. I mean, I really need to be having a list in front of me when I do interviews. So I hope you'll forgive me that it's great. I'm so inundated. You do?
Yeah, I got a list. Yeah.
Once he started, it really didn't stop. And I mean, same as Hal Blaine, 3 to 4 sessions a day, to the point where Dad and like Bernard Purdy and who's that other wonderful guy that Dad loved so much? Yeah.
Louis Bellson?
No, he was the session guy that, oh man, what was his name? Buddy Salzmann. Okay, the world needs to know about Buddy Salzmann. Yeah, so Dad loved Buddy Salzmann, Buddy loved Dad. And in this day, this was a time of camaraderie. This is a time when all these cats would get together, all these drummers, and they all had all these sessions, and they didn't want to be lugging their gear or have the radio registry people lug their gear. So they all would donate a kit. Like Gary, my daddy, would donate like 2 or 3. Bernard Purdy donated like 2 or 3. And all these drummers would donate kits, and they would stock them and store them in Mirror Sound, Bell Sound, all the studios where all this stuff was going on. And they would share and use their equipment. And if one cat was in the middle of something and he had another session, another cat would come in and they were too busy to be competitive. And there was enough work for everybody. And it was just like a loving family. They hung out together. They got stoned together. They drank together. They were grateful. And they knew what it took to be able to sit in that A chair. And this rhythm section was called For Everything. And that was people like Gary Chester and the bass player. Billy Psycho was on guitar. I can't remember, but this is all the stuff that's in the documentary.
Right. You got to watch the documentary.
Yeah, you got to watch the documentary because it's sort of, Denny Tedesco's a friend, and he did the Wrecking Crew. He's Tony Tedesco's son. Tommy Tedesco, I'm sorry. Tommy Tedesco's son. And he's going to interview me for the documentary because we thought it would be really cool to have somebody else that knows what it's like to grow up with somebody like that.
Yes, exactly.
And he did the Wrecking Crew, and we compare notes all the time. His dad and my dad, and I'll call up Hal Blaine and say, when you did this, like, what's something like my dad would have done when he did this? And he'd be like, Katrina, we didn't give a shit. Like, I wanted this to happen. And so then I would say, Gary, you do it. And Gary would say, you do it. And then we would get this person to do it. And I think that's what I love the most about this whole discovery is when I entered into the music business, not entered in it, but when I started to actually see a little bit of success, it already started to build up that there needed to be somebody that was doing better than somebody else.
Yeah.
It just, the vibe I'm getting, Dave, about that era is that it just wasn't like that.
Right.
It was about the song. It was about the lyrics. It was about the entire story. And if you're there to be seen and heard, you're probably not the right cat for the session.
Right. Yeah.
And man, I love that humbleness. I love that you're a bigger star to me when you can devote and sacrifice for the big picture. And I think my dad was really tapped into that.